Zombie Tech. Welcome to Zombie Tech, a forum for engineers, scientists, and inventors to ponder on the technologies needed to survive the inevitable zombie apocalypse.
She's Eddie.
He's Whisker.
And who do we have this week?
We have the chef.
The chef.
The chef.
That's a bit, I don't, how do you become the chef?
Mostly you just claw and fight your way to the top, I guess. It's probably a bad way to answer. Let
As
me start.
long as you don't eat brains along the way, I think we're okay.
Yeah, that's probably the starting point. Question 1. Do you eat brains? No, I don't. Wait, what kind of brains? Like that.
Oh.
That sounds okay. You're in.
Oh man, what kind of brains? They do have dishes that involve brains, right?
There definitely are some. Yep.
Is it head cheese? Is that what they call it?
You could call it that. Yep.
Have you
There are a lot.
tried it?
No, personally, it's something that kind of makes me go, no.
No. Yeah.
I'm an adventurous eater, though, I'll say that, so there are a lot of things I have tried.
I know my stepmom has made it and had it. She grew up on a farm and
What?
they ate everything
Oh,
from the rooter to the tutor,
oh,
she'd say.
gross.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, and it
Not me,
wasn't even
though.
like prepared as a delicacy. It was just, all right,
Yeah.
Sunday dinner. Here we go, brain.
And then you've got the monkey
Gross.
brains in the Southeast Asia.
Is that actually legitimate, or is that just Indiana Jones speaking?
I don't know.
I don't
I
know.
wanna say it's legitimate because I think it's cool, you know, in that kinda way. Like, "Whoa, they're eating that. Ew, but I'm watching it and I can't look away."
You just want to see if they start gagging or if they actually enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of in the movie, it makes you look at these people and go, "That's amazing. They're not gagging. They look like they're enjoying it. These are really good actors." Or they actually are enjoying it, and then you really question yourself because 'cause you're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So you are a chef,
I am.
and are you like head chef, sous chef? What kind of chef?
I run a kitchen in St. Paul right now. It's a
Wow.
little religious institution place, so just it's a good job. They treat me really well. I get to build any menu I want. There's no restrictions or anything, so
Awesome.
first thing they told me in culinary arts was like, "You're never gonna get to use all the ingredients you want ever again. You're gonna have to be limited to a budget and blah blah." I was like, "Wow, that sucks. Why am I in this?" And then I found this job. I was like, "They lied. They lied." So
Nice.
yeah, I'm
Nice.
thoroughly enjoying it. I like my work. It's definitely a passion of mine. So
Nice. And like what would be an example menu of yours?
it really ranges because I have a lot of people who are really willing to try anything. So
Oh,
one day I'll do Thai, and the next day I'll do like full bore all American food.
sure.
So, and then the next day from there it'll be Mexican. So it really just depends on what I made the week prior.
Huh.
So
So I guess I'm trying. So is it like a restaurant or is it a?
nope, it's like a novitiate is what it's called.
Oh.
So there's actually a group of men. They come in to train to be priests essentially, and they
Ah.
live there. So I feed the whole group of men training. Yeah,
Ah, gotcha.
and
Gotcha.
it's a good job. So
Very cool.
yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
And how long did it take for you to become a chef?
This is 6 years in the making right now. So
Oh, okay.
the 2 year program. I had done 2 years of college prior to that. So
Okay. Okay.
and then afterwards was work in the field, just kind of boosting my way up until I could get my credentials knocked in.
Sure. Sure.
Now, a lot of our guests that we have on here, not all of them, we've had a few authors and scientists and whatnot, but a lot of them are into engineering, and a lot of the things they do are more obviously applied to the topic of the show. But I got the idea a couple weeks ago that what we're really lacking here in something that we haven't covered in a lot of detail, we've touched on it a bit here and there, is that the sort of food infrastructure that we have in Western culture is good, you know, good dandy. But if
Mhm.
there's zombies running around trying to eat you, it no longer really functions as intended, and most of the population will starve, die, become zombies and enemies. So it'd be really good if people were to spend a little bit more time thinking about how much uh, what type and how to store food in case there is any interruption in the supply chain.
Mhm.
That's definitely a good thing to start thinking about now. Because honestly, to get enough food supplies stocked up for any substantial amount of time where you're like locked in someplace, it's going to take some effort. So, canning is obviously the number one way to preserve foods, and drying foods is the second best way. So, I mean, you can can pretty much anything.
Hmm.
I mean, I've
Meat?
literally seen tutorials on canning bacon,
Ugh.
Mm.
which actually turned out pretty
Ew.
amazing afterwards.
Did
It
it?
sounds gross. Yeah, it's really good. You can buy stuff that's already canned, like tack back, if you've seen that. It's canned bacon,
Huh.
comes out in like a little weird cylinder, and you unfold it, and
That
it's like
is
wrapped in
just
paper.
too
Yeah,
weird.
it's
Wow.
covered in grease as would be expected, and lard, and you just kind of pull it off the paper, throw it on your skillet, heat it up. It's already fully cooked. Tastes really freaking good. It's probably really bad for you. Uh,
Yeah.
can't really say anything for the nutritional value of bacon except heart attack, but you know.
Well, a lot of that, it's a heart attack when
It's called job
when used as
security.
part of a modern diet, it causes heart attacks. When
It's
you don't have
true.
access to protein, bacon's really good for you.
Is it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're getting all of the natural fats your body wants and needs when you're expending a lot of energy. So, I mean, there's going to be a definite high demand in an apocalyptic scenario where you are working probably 10 times as hard as you did at any job you had prior, unless, you're manual labor, which will keep you pretty fit. But, I mean, let's be honest, most of us have pretty quiet jobs.
Right.
So
Right.
later on, it's going to be important that we feed those muscles, and protein's got to happen.
So,
Hunting's probably going to do something for you if you can get your hands on enough bullets or trap works to hunt,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there are other ways.
Now, I grew up on canned stuff. Both my sets of grandparents had, large enough land that they grew things and they
Mm,
canned their tomatoes and potatoes and beans and all of these things. And they would hunt and uh, deer and pheasant and whatever. And
mhm.
so I grew up in that sort of mentality that you can go out, you can get your food, you can store it for long periods of time, and it can taste really good. You can make really good stuff
Yes.
with it. So to me, the idea isn't all that strange, but it seems that for most people, it's a completely alien concept.
It's totally out there. I mean, the percentage of people in the US that cook their own food nowadays is like super duper low.
Hmm.
Nobody cooks anymore, which is shocking. I work with a volunteer group, and one of the day camps we did for kids was a cooking day camp. And I pulled out some measuring spoons and cups, and I was like, "All right, who wants to do some measuring?" And they all just stared at me wide-eyed. Like, "Wow, that's a bad sign." So all right, let's start with this is 1 cup. And how many 1/3 cups go into 1 cup? Blank stares.
Oh my
Okay.
gosh.
Like that, there's 3 kids. 1/3, 2, and 3. That makes 1 cup. Okay, start over with teaspoons. So it was really eye-opening. I didn't realize that there were that few kids who really cook. And this was not like a super diverse group, I wouldn't call it, but
Well, I don't
these are
think they
kids
have
that would have
a measuring cup app yet, so
it's not
Golly.
quite out yet. They're working on it, I'm sure of it. But yeah, there are very few people passing on the knowledge to next generation. So I don't know if the zombie apocalypse doesn't happen in our day and age, and the next one's gonna be even worse.
Huh.
So
Okay.
it's kind of downward spiral, I guess you could call it.
Hmm. Now,
But
you were saying, so you guys are talking about canning and like drying, I'm assuming meats. But how about any ideas for refrigeration? What would you do for
refrigeration's gonna be tough.
mm,
Really, it's gonna have to be a lot of dry goods or stuff that can stay stable temperatures. Like root cellars were what they had before. That's what we're gonna have to go back to.
mm.
yeah.
So dig a
My
hole in the
grandparents just
ground,
kept
you're gonna
everything
hate
in
it.
the cellar, it was fine.
Really? No
Yeah.
Mhm.
fridge?
um,
No refrigerator.
If
Well, a lot of
you
the meats can cure and dry without refrigeration too, which is not something we think of nowadays because we're like, oh my gosh, bacterial infestation, which is true, but if you do it the right way, you're not gonna get sick.
So what's the right way?
The right way is kind of a day by day process, hanging the meat and then cleaning the meat and then curing the meat. It's a lot of work, which I think we'd have time for in the zombie apocalypse, but
Right.
it all depends. If you've
Now,
got a nice base set up, you could do it.
now what do you mean by like cleaning the meat? You mean like there's like a a a layer of mold that grows over that you have to clean off?
Well, when you hang the meat, it starts out with just like first you're gonna drain it, so you gotta hang the carcass from like a tree, for example, is how you'd
Sure.
start. And then you have to drain the blood, otherwise everything will go rancid. And
Oh,
then after that's done, you're not skinning it or anything at that point. It hangs a deer you'd hang for like 3 to 5 days. And then after it's hung, the meat, those proteins in there are gonna break down more, which makes it tender. So when you cook it, it's not like trying to chew on a chunk of wood.
sure.
Um, so after it's hung for like 3 to 5 days, then you'll strip off the exterior, which is going to be the heavy lard in the wintertime, and you can use that for cooking still. And then you'll strip the hide, of course, first, and clean out all the different muscle portions, and then cut for storage. And if you're going to do curing, I think the best way is probably still going to be salt cure if you can get your hands on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really depends on what you have access to. If there's nothing like that, it's gonna have to be like a clay cure, which is really old
A
school.
clay cure.
Clay,
What's
yeah.
that?
You'd pack the meat in like layers of clay.
Huh.
That's how they did it. And then you'd like bake it in a fire, and the end result is like beef jerky,
Huh.
something to that effect.
I guess to
So
a certain extent clay is salty. I see a lot of deer. I see a
the
lot of
min-
deer licking clay
it's
from where
got the
I'm at.
minerals and stuff to more press the meat and keep it from just like breaking down or getting gross and infected with gross things. So
So
yeah,
I've never done any hunting of any sort in my entire life.
East Coaster.
Yeah, I'm an East Coaster, and we are like anti-gun, so to speak. Although now being in the Midwest, I'm a little more open-minded about it. But when you
it all
hang,
depends are, but yeah.
when you hang a carcass for 3 to 5 days, it doesn't start rotting.
No, the amazing part of the animal body is that it's not going to decay significantly, except to say that the proteins are going to break down in the muscle mass,
Huh.
um, unless you like hit it with a car and the blood vessels just broke throughout the meat.
Oh,
That would
sure.
cause problems. So the kill is really important, the way you do it. You can't destroy the meat when you kill the animal, or you've ruined your meal.
So what's the ideal way to kill it?
The ideal way is going to be a heart and lung shot if you're using firearms. If you have to do trap, it's got to be catch by the leg and then a quick. This sounds so morbid.
No, but it's
Quick.
very interesting because I mean, like
One
in
great
the
thing about
event
the
of
whole zombie apocalypse way of talking about things is it's a metaphor that allows you to approach these subjects that people just don't want to ask about because it is morbid. It is difficult to approach normally.
right.
But it's like, okay, if there's zombies running around and you can't go to the grocery store and you want a hamburger, the only way to get a hamburger is to know how to butcher an animal.
Right.
Yeah. And so, all right, if you guys are comfortable with it,
I'm comfortable
then
with it.
the next step would have to be if you're catching via snare, larger animals don't really work so well for snare, but
Hmm.
smaller ones like a rabbit, for example, it's a quick throat slit and
Hmm.
drain it. So you're not actually damaging anything in the animal for muscle muscle portions.
Hmm.
Obviously, though, I mean, rabbits are probably not your best choice considering we can't digest their meat properly. So,
Oh,
quick fact there. Yep.
really?
If you tried to live on rabbit and celery, I guess you'd die.
Wow.
Yep. It takes more energy to break down the proteins of rabbit meat than you'd actually get back from it.
All right. So for those dieting,
Yes, eat your
rabbit
rabbit
and
and celery.
celery, which is really weird
Mhm.
because rabbits eat celery.
I know, right?
Don't you
I
think
know.
rabbits would like lose weight then instead of
I
getting
think
fatty?
there's a connection here, but they digest things differently, different
Sure.
body process. But
Sure.
for us, it's probably something that we think of as like, oh, wild game. I can catch whatever and eat it, and I will be fine. Not necessarily.
Gotcha.
It's
Gotcha.
also a really interesting thing I also found was thinking about corn because a lot of people I've talked to decided that when they have their zombie apocalypse base all set up, they're going to plant cornfields
Right.
and they're going to feed everybody with corn. I was like, yeah, but corn may grow really well for a while, but it sucks the most nutrients out of your soil, which means eventually your ground's going to be infertile, which means you can't plant anymore. And
Right.
we don't really get anything from corn unless we add some kind of acid to it, like lime juice,
Hmm.
for example. Corn really does nothing for us.
Hmm.
Like, so you'll get really, really sick and probably get scurvy. Yay.
Yeah, a lot of the health problems we have in Western society there at this point are because we have uh, changed most of our diet over to an engineered form of corn that is almost all fructose. And it
Yep.
just really doesn't have what we need to be us. It
Hmm.
has things that
And
our body are like, ooh, I like that. Yay. But
yes,
in the long
and good
term,
luck getting your hands on any kernels that you can plant that are not that.
True.
You can't get any seeds nowadays that
True.
are going to continue producing. It's
yeah,
a one-time.
the Monsanto stuff is designed to not be able to go a second generation because they want to build it in so that the farmers have to buy it again and again and again.
It's
Yeah.
constantly a cycle of replacement. I
Hmm.
mean, we've basically defeated the easy access to making crops for zombie apocalypse survival.
So anyone interested in growing corn out there, the sort of corn that you want to get is maize. You don't want to get uh, normal corn that they grow in fields nowadays because that's just seed corn that they feed to animals anyway. You want to get old school maize, and it's getting harder and harder to find. So get some seeds
Yes.
now while you still can.
Get them while you can and keep a crop running right now. I mean, because otherwise there will be no way you can sustain anything
Hmm.
at that point.
My grandma
So,
kept 8 or 9 rows of sweet maize in
Mm-hmm.
her front yard the
Well,
entire time I was a
oh,
kid. So every
nice.
every single end of summer, we'd always have corn on the cob, and it'd all be colorful.
well, that works.
Nice. We used to also do corn. I'm originally from South Dakota, which
Ah,
was fun and interesting and really, really quiet. So being out there, we always had gardens in the backyards.
yep.
Everything. We grew everything.
Yep.
Lettuce and cabbage and beets and onions and potatoes and snow peas and peppers of every kind you can imagine
Wow.
and probably something that like Brussels sprouts that never really made it because of those stupid cabbage butterflies, but those
Cabbage
things all
butterflies. This
yeah,
is completely new to me.
they're the little white and yellow guys, and they're so pretty and fluttery, and they're always around the gardens.
Mm.
They love to eat, obviously, cabbage, but also Brussels sprouts and broccoli.
Huh.
Now,
Mm.
could you give the quick once over to explain to people the easiest way, just the mason jar way of being able to can things so that they can last for years?
Yeah, canning the following the process is super important too. You can't skip processes in this because if you do, you'll most likely end up with bacteria locked into a can that could kill you.
Mm.
So there's going to be the initial cooking process. You take your product. So say you're going to can potatoes, for example, and you're going to peel them, wash them, peel them, and then cut them and cook them. And you cook them first so that whenever you're using them later, they're just ready, edible, gonna go potatoes. So cook them and then put them aside, and your cans have to heat in a big canning pot. I'm sure you've maybe seen these. They're really super tall, and they're usually like pressure. Or they've got the lids, and they've got a little pressure gauge on them and stuff, so you can see like the ultimate, like the total heat that's going on in there. Heat your cans, and then fill, and then you've got to put the lid on, and then put them back in again. So reheat until that lid gets a seal, and you'd have to break that seal to open it again after it's cooled.
Hmm.
A
So
lot of the
it's just
younger listeners aren't gonna be too familiar with mason jars. You don't see them around too much anymore. But
that's
when you go to crack one open, it's very cool because you have to take the ring of the top off, and then it still has the sealed lid on it, and it has like a little rubber seal on it, and you have to sort of peel that back just a little bit to let some air get into the jar before you can get it open.
So, what step do people skip most that ends up allowing bacteria to go in?
People either contaminate the product at the beginning stage. So green beans are especially hazardous for this reason. They don't clean them properly, or they've got them sitting on a tabletop with some other foods, and they get contaminated somewhere along the lines. And
Uh,
then they'll cook them just till they're warm and just start to get tender because they don't want the green beans to be mushy once they go in the can. And
sure.
then they put them in their can, and then they'll screw on the lids and maybe not seal the lids again.
Hmm.
They figure the heat from the green beans and the can itself will be good enough and close it up and put it in their cupboards. And sure, it looks pretty well sealed, but there's not necessarily the right air gap. There's not the right amount of pressure inside the can. Oxygen is still locked in it.
Mm-hmm.
Bacteria feeds off oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
It needs it to grow. And if you don't do this, there's going to be a serious infestation by the time you open that can next.
So
And I
then,
mean, there are cases of people literally dying from poisoning because of
yeah.
canned foods. So yeah, it could be really tragic. You think you're like saving your family in the apocalypse. Turns out you kill them. It would be bad. So following the guidelines
Awkward.
is important. Yeah.
So, in terms of a farm, what would you like? Assume, let's say you had four crops you could grow. What would these four crops be?
That's kind of a tough question because it's regionally going to be different,
Okay.
um,
So
depending on
let's
where you live,
so let's say
really.
since we're all in Minnesota, you included.
hmm
Let's say for Minnesota.
Minnesota. All right. Well, there's probably going to be a few. Well, this is actually a really tough question.
Yeah.
Depending on the size of your group, also, there's going to be things like if you can get any kind of fruit growing, apples are going to be your best bet.
Okay.
So apple trees, if you can get them going right away, and they take years to get started. So if you can
Right.
find one already producing, that's even better.
Right.
Um, so apples, and I'd go. mm, Beets are probably another really good one. People don't really think of beets as being that great and awesome,
Hmm.
but they're really, really hearty. They're super good nutritionally speaking. They carry a lot of fiber, which is going to be tough in the apocalypse. Uh, and I don't know, I like beets, so there. And third one, oh, can I say it? Potatoes, definitely potatoes.
Okay.
Also, another hardy crop, grows well in Minnesota, produces a lot of food. It goes a long way. It's a heavy starch, fills your stomach. Not really heavy on the protein side, but whatever. Um, and the fourth crop, apples, beets, potatoes. Fourth crop is kind of an open one.
Okay.
I'm going to just stick with the top three because it's
Okay.
really to go beyond that is kind of unnecessary almost as well because it really is going to be hard to get seeds for anything.
Sure.
So it's going to be like, if you can get your hands on this stuff, plant it. If you can't, get whatever you can and plant it.
Sure.
And always make sure you keep some back seeds if you're planning. So in case you have a bad year, you always want to make sure you've got a fallback for the next season.
Right.
Yeah, the one detriment is going to be that you need to get as much in the ground as possible. But if you plant it all at one time and you lose the crop, you're done.
Right. Right.
So it's kind of a
Now,
tough call.
so my question then is, what happens if an infected person dies on your farmland? Does that contaminate your crops?
Depends on the
Is that infected, I assume?
infection vector.
There's going to be probably an area of die off, but not permanently.
Hmm.
It'd be kind of like, you get a deer that dies. It's a large carcass, remove it. Don't let it sit and rot because that will it
So it's
it
not like
releases the
good
soil large.
fertilizer.
Only if it's in small pieces.
Hmm.
And that sounds really funny, but I would say from the perspective of zombies, I would never consider that fertilizer. It's probably be a bad thing.
You have undead crops
It's like, why are
Grr.
my crops just looking weird at me? Like they're looking at me. Something's really wrong.
Come closer.
Zombie
Come
corn.
examine
Yeah.
the beets.
Oh my gosh, yes. You just want to pull the weeds, don't you?
All right, so those three, what's it called? Potatoes, beets, and apples. Could
Sure.
you could you end up staying relatively alive on those for say a month?
A month, definitely. Easily a month. But it depends on harvest times as well.
Sure.
So, two of the ones I picked were winter crops. One is summer. All three will go through the winter.
Cool.
They'll sit in a cellar all winter long and not go bad. They
Nice.
might be a little wrinkly at the end, but it's kind of like if you consider the seafarers' method of packing food, they packed everything that could just sit in barrels for
Mhm.
months.
Mhm. Mhm.
And apples were always on their list because the scurvy issue is really huge.
Right.
They always end up with vitamin deficiencies. And I mean, citrus is the best way to get it, but I mean, we're not growing citrus here, so
Right. Right.
that's a tough one.
One of the people we've interviewed on the show previously grows citrus trees in his yard
In the
in
freaking desert.
Arizona.
Wow, that's brave. That's cool. I'm impressed. Does
Hmm.
he just have a really good irrigation system?
Yeah,
Pretty
That's
much.
awesome.
he's done some indoor hydroponics work too, so he really kind of knew what he was doing before he, got into it.
It really helps to have those skill sets to begin with. I
That's
may have to
actually a system that,
Arizona.
yeah, of all places, right?
Right.
I think an indoor hydroponics system would probably be, I don't know, the best because then you don't have the risk, you don't run the risk of zombies attacking you while you're weeding, right?
It's true. I mean, also though, if you've got a farm clear out in the middle of nowhere, zombie attacks are probably going to be pretty limited in the first place.
True. Very true.
I mean, if you're trying to plant a garden in the middle of the city, you're probably going to have some issues. But
You're probably going to be eaten.
probably, I go with yes. It's a high chance of being eaten. There's probably quite a few ways to do the gardening, the planting as well. But I mean, really, a 1 acre crop is so much food.
Is
People
that
are like,
enough?
"Oh my, no, yes, oh yes." I mean, you can do like just like a 10 by 10 garden is enough to feed a whole family.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's substantial. When it's harvest time, there's tons of food. I mean, I'm sure anybody who's lived on a farm in the past and maybe ran a garden themselves is familiar with how much you can really pull in from one crop of like apples, for example.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
humongous.
Yeah, some of my uh, cousins, I guess I'll call them, there's a lot of them, and it's all sort of couple times removed or whatever, but they own one of the largest apple orchards and oldest in Michigan. And uh, going there and visiting their orchards and seeing just how many trees they can have and how many apples they pull in at the end of the year,
Mm,
it's just mind-boggling.
mm.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, and also if you happen to have livestock, say that you manage to get some cows or you manage to get pigs or horses, whatever you've got on hand, you can feed any of the ground apples to your livestock, and it's really great for them.
Oh, that works too.
Yeah, we used to
So
always
it
give the
all
horses
works out.
apples. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
in terms of like livestock, if you had the choice of one livestock animal to breed and raise, which would you choose?
I might pick cows, I think.
Okay.
They usually do a fairly good job grazing as long as you keep them pastured in different areas. I mean, I grew up with cows. We lived on a farm.
Ah,
So
okay. So
there
you're
were
used to
cows
them.
everywhere. I'm
Gotcha.
used to cows and pigs. There were sheep for a while. We did not enjoy the sheep so much. They're actually really complicated, I guess. So, the sheep didn't go so well, but yeah, the cows and pigs were good and easy to care for. Cows are going to eat a lot more, but like I said, if you just have like two or three, that can produce enough milk for, another protein source, and that's also going to be calcium. So, there's one.
S-
That would be good, I think.
So would it be better? So I would have chosen chicken. because then you
Chicken
get
is all
eggs, right? And then if you have a rooster, then you get more chickens, and then you get meat. Whereas, I mean,
yeah.
beef, yeah, you get meat, but you kind of have to wait a
It's
long time.
mostly for the age difference is gonna be cows live a lot longer, and
Mm-hmm.
the chickens are also kind of bait, if you would consider them that way, for larger animals in case you want
Ah,
hunting. So you
true,
could use chickens in a lot of different ways. It's
true.
definitely a good option, and my dad currently has
Oh,
chickens as well. He's enjoying his chickens thoroughly. He's starting again this next spring with a bunch of egg layers. He's decided it's just eggs now. He's not going to be doing any butchering. But um
he likes his
yeah,
chickens too much, huh?
he likes his chickens. Yeah. Yeah. That might be why I shied away from answering chickens. Not that
Sure.
there's anything wrong with them.
No, no. I can
Um
understand that.
I would have to agree with the chickens though is another very good option.
Yeah, a friend of ours over in LA, of all places, she teaches people how to pick out and raise chickens for eggs uh,
Oh,
in
neat.
in that urban environment. And yeah,
It's like a
she
chic thing to do.
yeah, I guess
Mhm.
it's the yuppie thing to do out there now. But yeah, she gets more eggs than she knows what to do with, and I think she only has 3 or 4
Yeah.
hens.
Yep.
Yeah, it's approximately 1 egg a day per chicken.
Yep.
So, if you're rolling 1 egg a day, it's good food for pretty much anyone. I've
Right.
never heard of I've never heard of someone with a serious problem with eggs. I mean, it's definitely there, but like the majority of people are going to be able to tolerate eggs.
True.
But
Now, a question. So these days, people here eat three quote unquote square meals: breakfast, lunch, dinner.
mhm.
And, when it comes to like the zombie apocalypse, do, is immediate rationing okay? And like, what's the minimum amount that people have to eat in order to, I don't know, handle the stress as well as the extra uh, activity? Do you
The
think?
demand is going to be really high. It's kind of there's not going to be a way to balance it either. You're going to be expending massive amounts of energy just to survive. You're either going to be on foot traveling or the work you're going to have to do to upkeep some semblance of a base of operations is going to be intensive. So, you'll be expending at least the minimum what they call the minimum
Mm-hmm.
for an active lifestyle, which is 2500 calories a day. And and there's no way you're going below that really.
Mm,
Just to stay warm in the wintertime, unless you have another heat source, is gonna take a ton of energy.
right.
So when it's the most difficult to get food is when you'll be expending even more energy.
Mm,
And this is why back in the day when they first started settling this upper area with the cold and everything, you had so many people dying all the time. They weren't prepared for it. So you
yeah.
get like a bunch of people come in, they set up a town, and then suddenly the blizzard rolls in and they have no food and they're all just huddled together dying because they weren't prepared.
Right.
You've got to set up enough food sources for that in the winter. Chickens, like you were saying, can come indoors, but
Excellent.
yes, they do stop laying eggs unless they get that regular sunlight, though.
Ah,
Yes, it is
dang
kind
it.
of tricky. So there's that one flaw to the awesome chickens. Um, the the physical requirements in the zombie apocalypse is mostly going to be hard labor. You're going to be working every muscle in your body all the time.
Mm,
And anytime you're doing that, you need heavy protein loads. You've got to keep up with it, or your body starts literally eating your muscle tissue.
right.
So it's going to start consuming you. And it's like a different kind of
It's
virus.
like
Yay!
it's a self zombie.
Yep.
Yes, the self zombie effect.
How
Oh,
ironic would
that's
that
bad.
be? Can you imagine?
Uh,
You managed to set up this camp, right? You're rationing your food, but and you're protected from zombies, but you're not protected from your own damn self.
yes, and then you're like dying, dying, dying.
Dead.
And dead.
And then
Yeah,
you eat your friend.
and you eat your bread. Not like Cannibal the Musical at all. Not at all. But
Gosh.
I'd say you're gonna have to hit that 2,500 calorie mark at the bare minimum.
Mm,
So it's probably we eat more than that nowadays. I
Right.
mean, we eat so much every day. Just like lunch with a friend can equal 1,500 calories because we had a drink and dessert at the
Mm.
same time.
Mhm.
So it's going to be a little more difficult with apples, potatoes, and beets, but you'd have to get there somehow. People
Sure.
also talk a lot about doing raids. You know, we're gonna go out to that grocery store that they locked down after the apocalypse, and we're gonna load up on stuff. It's like, what are you gonna get? Like baked beans and uh, corn. Right. So that's going well, right?
Well, you're gonna be
Um,
farting, tooting,
and
and you're gonna
crying because
be
you
and
still
pooping
feel hungry.
kernels. Yep. Yep.
Yes, that's probably not a good plan. There's gonna be stuff that you can still get your hands on if you've got access to the extra resources. There's gonna be like quinoa is something that all grocery stores have pretty much nowadays.
Mhm.
And that's a complete protein in a grain.
Mm, that's great.
Which is like, oh, well, we don't have to eat meat to get a complete protein. Because people are like, well, beans have protein. Yeah, partial protein. You're like
Mm.
halfway there. You have to combine beans and rice to get a complete protein.
So what would you say is the most important? Is it protein? Is it carbohydrates? Is it like what among these categories is
You're made of and run off of all of them combined.
well, I understand that, but I
Yeah.
mean like if
That's why I
if
mentioned
there
the
is
sugar
only
thing
one.
earlier with the corn, because it's only a fructose. You're not getting your sucrose and your other sugars,
No, I
and
get
your
that.
body can't do what it needs to do with only one of the sugars. It needs all, what are there, four main sugars?
Yes. Yep. There's going
So,
to be a combination of things, but protein and carbohydrates are pretty much the top of the list.
okay.
There's a lot of places to get them,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
it's how much of each you're getting and combined that makes the body function at its optimum.
Right.
So if we
Okay.
have like the beans and rice, that's perfect together. Just
Mhm.
rice, not so good. Just
Right.
beans,
Not
not
so
so
good.
good.
Right. Right.
High fiber, that's about it.
Right.
Which is another concern I had when people are starting to talk about MREs. I'll just load up on MREs and that will get me through the apocalypse.
For a week or two.
A week, maybe, or 2? Yes, and they will get you far considering the calorie count in each one, but I have heard story after story from service people who are like, "Yeah, those things lock you up tight.
Oof.
Don't eat anything with cheese in it."
Oof.
Like, wow, that's probably also very bad for me if I'm eating all these fake cheese processed foods that come in the MREs. They're
Right.
high calorie, yes, and they were designed to be balanced. I mean, scientifically speaking, they are balanced. But when you actually put them into practice, these guys and women in the military are suffering
Hmm.
in various ways because of things that weren't quite accounted for. Like what happens if you get all cheese omelets for like 8 meals in a row? Probably not good for them, huh?
Probably
So
not.
if you get a good combination of MREs, maybe you could do it for a while, but eventually it's going to take a toll on the body.
Sure. Sure.
Any diet in the apocalypse is going to take a toll on the body. The goal is to make things as balanced as possible with what you can work with. It sounds silly, but if you can raid a vitamin store, do it.
Right.
Go and get those things because your diet is going to be seriously lacking in so many ways. If you don't supplement with something, you'll start deteriorating health
So,
in any.
right. So besides a multivitamin, what would you recommend for vitamins? Let's say we're on your diet of beets, potatoes, and apples.
We're going to die. I'm just kidding. We'll be fine. Really, really, we'll be fine. I can't prove that that's going to be a perfect balanced diet either. I just know what would survive in a Minnesota environment, and that's
Sure.
what I would suggest. But if we're doing that, vitamin C is going to be probably a vitamin that's regularly supplemented.
Mm,
Our bodies can take that in pill form really easy.
mhm.
Calcium can also be taken in relatively well up to a certain age. Otherwise, it's just kind of flushed from the body as you don't need it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Any
Now,
other
most
supplements?
of the listeners on this show are, of course, engineers, so therefore they basically spend their life sitting on their behinds, and they're not going to go out and start a farm in their backyard. What types of foods can these guys go out and get some extra of to say put in the cellar that's just available on the shelf?
Good stuff on the shelf. Anything that's going to be canned in its natural juices, like something that's not added with high fructose corn syrup or some kind of cornstarch, corn product, anything with the corn. There's those things, avoid them. But anything in its natural juices, those are good.
Okay.
Go with those. Any grains, whole grains, fantastic. Don't get white rice. Don't get white rice.
Oh, but
Get
it's
brown rice,
so
get
good.
quinoa, get barley, get any kind of grains you can get your hands on that are whole grains. Get them.
So,
Cereals last really long.
yeah,
Those are also good.
I think quinoa is would be a pretty good option. I've never had it before. Is it good?
It's pretty tasty.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Okay.
like quinoa. And there's a lot of ways to cook it. I mean, if you like rice pilaf, you'll like quinoa pilaf, for
Hmm.
example.
Mm-hmm.
If you like chicken rice casserole, you'd like chicken quinoa casserole. It's like a
Interesting.
substitute for rice.
Sure.
Pretty tasty.
Sure.
It also has, I think, a better flavor than most rices.
Oh,
That's just me personally. The texture I also appreciate. It's not gonna be like jasmine rice. Jasmine rice has more of like a firm texture to it. It's not really replaceable by quinoa, but any soft grain textured rice like short grain is gonna be, you
okay.
can substitute quinoa, and quinoa is definitely gonna be better for you.
Gotcha. So, if at this point in time you were to prepare for um 1 month of zombie apocalypse hell,
Actually, I'm thinking I want a winter's worth of stuff.
a winter?
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
I
three.
want a
So
full winter's worth of
3 to 4 months, depending on
We're
the
in
weather.
Minnesota, so
Six
th-
six
this
months,
this winter was like 3 weeks long.
right?
But
Yes, and then it was
normally
done.
we're talking like 4.5 months
It's
of
like
winter.
October to May.
Right.
More or less here. You have to expect winter conditions because sometimes it just does not warm up until nearly June.
True.
It's crazy, but
True.
that's happened. We My sister's wedding a couple years ago. We saw snowflakes in June. June.
Nice.
This is wrong. I wanted to cry, but it was freaking cold and I didn't know what to do, so we just
Oh.
smiled for the camera a lot.
Oh
So
man.
but yes, it happens here, but I could expect it, anywhere between the beginning of October to the middle of May or so. There's still potential for winter conditions, so that's quite a bit of gap between there, but
So we have a nice big house here with a nice big cellar. Okay.
mm,
Lots of space that we're not using that we could use to store a bunch of non-perishable stuff.
mhm.
What would we be best to focus on for making it through a winter if it happened to hit right there in, October or something?
Water, you've got to get tons of water. There's going to be, unless you have a well, if you're running a well, you're okay. Um, but anyone with like a water hookup to the city system is going to have lots of water on hand for cooking, sanitation, and drinking.
Mm.
And keep
So,
your gray water separate from your drinking water. Uh,
oh,
what do you think is a good way to store large amounts of water in a cellar?
there are barrel systems I've seen with like it's a tap essentially like a beer tap, but it's like a giant barrel, like kind of a miniature well, you could call it, but you just take the barrels and you load them and then they cap them and you put them in your storage and that's it. So that's successful. You can do the 1 gallon jugs, but they do leak after a year or so
Hmm.
of storage. I know from experience.
Wow.
They just suddenly decide they don't want to hold water anymore. So
Weird.
yes, it's bizarre because they say, "Oh, buy these for emergency." I was like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that again."
Huh.
So the 1 gallon water jugs, if you buy them, put them in something else. You've got to transfer to a larger container or a different sort of container. But probably the barrels. And then for removing water for use, just probably a pour system. If you can get a tap on it, like a faucet, that would be good. It's not going to be complicated to install one if you can do just the barrel and then rig a little mini faucet turn like you'd have for your outdoor faucet to it.
Mhm.
But
And it's
stuff
really
like that
good to
might be
have
best.
water around, even if you're not worried about zombies. You should keep a couple 20-ounce bottles of water in your freezer. And they'll stay frozen, and if the power goes out for a couple of days or overnight or something like that, the ice in those bottles will help keep your freezer cold, so everything doesn't thaw out.
Mhm.
You can keep a couple of 2 liters of water in your fridge. Addie and I do.
Mhm.
so that if they need to turn off the water for any reason, be it maintenance or the city water has to have its checks every so often, and sometimes they'll turn water off for a day while they fix a problem. You should always just have some water around the house.
It's so much safer to just plan and be prepared in advance. So water is definitely, like you said, it's got to be one of the first priorities. And I know it sounds silly, but they did say it's a gallon a day per person, which sounds like a lot. But when you consider cooking needs and sanitation and drinking,
Mm,
it ends up being that much.
mhm,
We do a lot of backpacking and backcountry hiking and stuff, and we found that we go through a lot more water than we thought we would.
mhm.
So we got a filtration system. It's a ceramic filter and attaches to a larger pump unit that you can just put the tube into a source of water. So, like a stream, preferably, or a lake. We've done it, we've used this thing in a lake with like tons of algae growth and
Oh,
just to see what would happen. And it
oh,
did really well. This
wow.
was some of the best water I've ever tasted because it's like pure, it's just water. There's nothing in it. It's
Yeah,
great.
and if you
So if you
guys
can
would
get
like
it,
more large scale and technical solutions for this, you go back check out Zombie Tech with John SAZ. I think he talked about some large scale stuff, and John Cohn has actually built one on the TV show The Colony, where they had to purify water out of the LA River of all places.
Ugh.
oh wow,
Yep.
that's pretty amazing.
Yep.
He ended up using a Tesla coil to generate O3, and the O3 would basically take all the nasty stuff out of the water, and then sand filtration from there on out.
Yep.
That is really cool.
So I was reading your blog, and you mentioned that you and your friends went out, I guess, on a bug out camp,
Oh
and you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
practiced your zombie apocalypse plan. Can you tell
Yes.
me a little bit about that and how that went?
Yes, that was fun. We went out with some friends and did a weekend bug out experience, and I learned a lot. There were things I was not expecting that just blew me off my feet. I was like, "Wow, okay, let's change plans altogether." So ultimately it made me decide that my up north plan was not a good idea.
Oh.
It was actually a very bad idea. Because when you decide that you're going to go with a group of people, first of all, any more than like 3 or 4 starts
Mhm.
to get really complicated because of the social dynamics.
Oh,
And that was something I didn't anticipate.
sure.
I thought, we're just a bunch of friends. Let's go. Yeah. But things start to get tense at about day 1. So
So,
you
like,
start out,
what were the issues?
it was mostly like the competing ideas for how
Oh.
we should do things. So you start out with somebody who's a pretty fair leader in everyday circumstances where they come up with some good ideas. They propose them to a group, and people generally accept them as a good leader, and
Mhm.
then put them in a situation where things are not going the way they had planned.
Mhm.
It doesn't always turn out the same.
Sure.
But in this circumstance, it happened to be that things didn't go so smoothly. Um, Towards like the end of day 1, things started to get a little bit rough. But
Mhm.
yeah, the competing ideas was complicated to deal with because um, people who had really good ideas were not often brave enough to voice them
Mhm.
uh, when they felt like there was someone else who was stronger in their personality than they were.
Mhm. And it's
So
even
you
a
get,
and it was a pretty small group. It was 4 people, right?
yes,
So,
this
I
was
mean,
weird, though. I wasn't expecting it to
right.
be that obvious right away.
Right. Right. Huh.
But yeah, so ultimately it was like, well, okay, I know how I feel like I want to do things, but I don't always consider my ideas best. I think I
Mhm.
like to hear other people's opinions, get them all together, just think about this as a group, brainstorm, and then come up with the best solution, like all
Mhm.
voicing ideas and opinions
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
But, after I could see that a group that plans on working together like this may find that the strain is too much
Mm.
in the end, and they have to just leave, go their separate ways
Sure.
almost, or start by traveling separately and end up at the same destination.
Sure.
That was also another idea. Thought maybe that's the way to do it, travel separately to get to your end location if you're traveling. And then once you're there, things will probably be more okay.
Mm,
Like people are going to be a little more calmed down because they finally got there. Yes, they'll be frazzled because of all the stuff going on between point A and point B, but they will have made it.
right,
So they'll be more willing to work together.
right.
So,
So
yeah.
so
Although, one sec, I will say that in movies, the person who goes off on their own usually dies first.
Yeah, the loner. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This
So,
happens a lot in the movies. I would definitely say it's potentially a problem, but the safety in numbers thing is not always true
mm.
because you may be in danger because of group dynamics issues
True,
more than you would be from the zombies.
true.
So I would not say our trip was a failure by any means. That was a great trip. We all had a good time and we all had fun together. And we just learned a lot about ourselves that helps us prepare for future adventures and trips out into the wilderness. Like, what are we going to do next? Okay, well, we'll try this now because we didn't like the other one. So
Right.
time for a rework.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure.
I would recommend anyone who has a zombie plan, please, please, please don't tell us about it 8 million times. We've heard them all. Go
Ah!
out and try your plan. Can you just try, please? I know some of them are complicated, but if it's a plan, shouldn't you test it?
Yep, yep.
See if the world explodes. I don't know. Try it. Oh, but so as far as your winter stockpile goes, there's probably gonna be, a lot of potatoes and a lot of apples, and if you're gonna catch anything, it's gotta be either trap method so that you've got a working system, you go out and check every day for meat, or you're gonna have to, start getting your livestock in. If you got chickens, that's gonna not be eggs over the winter, so you're gonna have to actually just be killing off chickens, so hopefully you have enough at that point to harvest. Otherwise
unfortunately, there's city regulations that stop
Ah,
us from having anything interesting here. So
yeah,
I
beans.
know. They don't let us have chickens. It's horrible.
um,
Oh,
I'm
no, I
stuck
thought there was
working
like
from the barrels of water and non-perishable like canned items and stuff like that.
so then, canned beans are gonna be really good, quinoa, rices, any kind of grains. Get your hands on those. Most canned vegetables are really good, not sweet potatoes or the yams, though. Those are really bad.
Mm,
Canned fruits are gonna be important as long as they're not in high fructose corn syrup or light syrup. The syrups are really bad. However, if you're just trying to survive, drink any fluids and liquids that come in the can.
mhm.
Don't leave those out because that's a source of calories. As the food sits in a can, it will leach out some of the content and you need all of it.
Right,
So drink the liquid. I don't care if it's water or syrup or what. Drink it.
right,
And then anything else, and it's also still counts as water source at that point. Anything else that you can get your hands on for vitamin supplements, keep them on hand, especially vitamin C. The body tends to do better just in general if you have more vitamin C in it. You know, get outside and get some sunlight during the day too. Otherwise, depression can set in, and no matter how much food you have, you're kind of done.
right.
So, balance is really the key. And if you're not getting balance, just do the best you can.
Okay, so Addie's got a couple of questions that we like to ask every guest.
Yes. Well, this one there. So I do have one question,
She always
just
does this.
curiosity. Yeah,
She always adds one.
I always do.
She's not supposed to do
Okay.
this, but she
I
always
always
does.
do.
So it's like part of the show now.
So, is there any merit to the 5-second rule?
No.
Okay.
If you drop it on a zombie, don't eat it.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, they've proven that the 10-second rule is even legit.
What do you mean? 10 seconds
You
is
can
okay?
can sit on the ground for 10 seconds is fine.
So 5 seconds is okay. 10 seconds is okay,
Yeah.
but then
Yep.
15 is not.
I don't know about 15. They tested 10. But yeah,
Wow.
they've proved it's actually okay.
So they're okay. Okay.
But it does depend on the circumstances.
Well,
If
yeah.
you're spit in a pile of dirt, you're probably probably
Gross.
no second rule there. It's like, well, we're
Gross.
done with that one. But
Right.
I definitely would say if it's falling on your kitchen floor, you're probably gonna be okay.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, and I have to add this question because I am beyond curious about this. Sorry, I know. Okay. Do you ever notice that when snow hits, people go out in droves to buy bread, eggs, and milk?
Yes.
Why?
I
I don't
I
get it.
have the same mystery to answer. I do not know. It's like they
What is
think they're
it?
gonna die.
French toast? I mean,
I don't know. Pancakes? I don't know. They're like, maybe we'll have pancakes and toast and eggs. And I was like, what are you doing? Yeah, what are
Right?
you doing? Maybe they get weird cravings.
I
I'm
am
not sure.
totally confused because it is always they're like people have been buying bread, eggs, and milk. I'm like, why?
I
They're
don't
like the
know.
worst things to keep in the time of like an emergency. They
I'm
don't
gonna
do
have to just
anything.
buy these things when it snows to see what I do with them afterwards. Maybe I'll somehow release whatever knowledge it is that I don't have.
I
I
think
don't
your
know.
I think your scientific method is a little flawed there.
It's a little bit whack, maybe. I could find the answer.
Gosh. Okay.
I can't help you there.
That's all right.
So
That's just a mystery that will never be solved.
I can tell you when my grandma does it though, because
Why?
she actually did get snowed in for 12 days one time.
Wow.
She went out and
Wow.
bought eggs, bread, and milk. She still had power, mind you,
Yeah.
but she went and bought these things and just sat there for 12 days and didn't really care. So I was like,
Well,
well, as long as, it worked for her, maybe that's why.
maybe.
My grandma's
Because
been making phone calls.
grandma said so.
Grandma said so and grandma's best. That's
Right.
the answer.
There you
There it
go.
is.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to finally get to the questions that I ask everybody. So, when you go to your zombie apocalypse bunker, what 3 tools would you take with you?
Ooh, 3 tools. Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Any tools.
Any tools, and I will even take. So, say you have like a knife set, that can be
Mhm.
1 tool.
Ooh, that's 1 tool?
Yep, that can be 1
Wow.
tool.
Do you know how many pieces of equipment I have in a knife set?
I do not.
A lot. But if you count that as 1,
Yep.
that is 1.
Okay.
So, my knife bag is
Okay.
number 1. I do weapons count as tools, or are those separate?
Those do count.
Dang it.
Mhm.
Okay. Uh, Second is gonna be my shotgun.
Okay.
I have to have it. Oh, I don't want the last one.
I mean, like, if you stick a bayonet on the top of it, I guess you could consider that too, but
Yes, with a my shotgun with a bayonet that I just constructed in my imagination. It's quite beautiful, actually.
duct tape, it always
Yes,
works.
it does. Um, uh, and then I suppose my shotgun constructed with duct tape and the 3 spare rolls attached to it doesn't count.
3 spare rolls of
Duct tape.
Oh!
I keep my duct tape on my shotgun.
It's just easier that way. You just hang it off the barrel right there, and it don't fall off unless you turn it, down. But you just hold it up anyway. Okay, so I can't count that.
I'll
We'll
take
we'll
it.
go
I'll
to
take it. That
That is
that performance earned you the 3
3
duct
rolls.
tape rolls.
Yes,
That earned it.
alright. So we have duct tape and a shotgun in my knife bag. Ooh, and I'm gonna say the last one will be a crowbar.
Okay,
Last one's gonna be a crowbar because
that
there's
works.
so many uses for that.
because we're all gonna meet in where is it? Red Wing or where's the spam factory?
Austin.
We'll rendezvous there. We'll steal all the
Gross.
spam.
Yes,
Gross.
and bunker down,
Have
just
you ever
like
been
right
there? It smells like spam.
It smelled like the whole
The
place is
whole
just
place.
rank with
You
it.
drive in and it, bam, spam.
As soon as you get out of the car, it hits you and you know you're
Oh
there.
my gosh. Yeah. Okay, so that works. Okay, and then the one book you would take with you.
Hmm. The one book I would take.
Makes me wish I could do a Julia Child's impression.
Right about now, right? Oh,
Yeah. Sigh.
sigh. I think if I brought my favorite cookbook, I'd get too depressed reading it. So
Ah,
that's no go. I can't say that. So, I'll say I would take a Bible with me for inspiration of daily words. I would
okay.
do that. Because
Okay.
it tends to be in darker times, can be inspiring. Don't read Job. Rest of the Old Testament.
I
Stay
found
away
Job
from that.
very enjoyable. He,
It
wa-
was
he was,
quite,
you know,
quite
It,
It made me grateful for my life.
in a zombie apocalypse, I mean, Job, I mean, he's got it easy, right?
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
true.
boils, I got a guy over here trying to bite me.
Yes. Boils. Loser.
Y'all are
What does he
dorks.
know? Yeah, I think I would bring the Bible, just daily inspiration and reading for something away from the rest of the world. Be good.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Otherwise, I think, yeah, the depression would set in pretty quickly. Looking at my poor cookbook.
Okay.
Alas, cookbook.
I know.
Truffles.
Oh
Truffles.
my gosh.
I remember truffles. Yeah.
Remember those. And then you'd be telling the stories to your grandkids. Back in my day, we had this stuff called chocolate. It was amazing.
Oh, Whisker can't do without chocolate or cookies. He is.
There'll but definitely be a few boxes of those in
He's
my
a.
stash.
Yeah, they'll
Oh,
last all of 1 hour.
yes, well, you got to say they were important.
Mm,
They got him through that hour.
I carry them with me
He may not have
Literally.
in my
otherwise.
gut.
That's the best place to keep food, by the way. On your person, mostly inside,
Right.
eating. Yes.
Right. I guess question-wise, I'm okay.
All right. Is
But
there anything that you wanted to make sure that people are aware of, Chef?
Yes, don't get bit. This is really our priority. It's kind of our little slogan. We actually have talked a lot about the name "Don't Get Bit" for the organization that I work with, and um, sometimes people will laugh at it like "Don't get bit." Isn't that obvious? Well, maybe so, but you realize the zombie apocalypse happened because people didn't listen, right? If they had just followed the one piece of advice, we would have been okay.
true.
But yeah, so don't get bit and stick with the blogs like this one. Definitely stay posted on new findings and happenings, and never be afraid to keep exploring for new options. Try out the ideas that you have. Don't leave them sitting in your brain because, at what point are they good then if they go nowhere else?
True. Very true. And so that's don'tgetbit.wordpress.com for this main organization site that Chef is a part of. And by the way, they're totally cool because they also have a zombie apocalypse team and they also have someone who's bait.
Awesome. Kindred
Sweet.
spirits.
Kindred spirits. Um,
Absolutely.
and your own blog is chefdon'tgetbit.wordpress.com.
Yes. Yep.
Cool. And she's got some awesome stories and awesome advice there too. So
Well, thank you.
definitely worth a read.
All right.
Thanks.
And you guys can find this show every Thursday at zombietech.tv. You can follow all of Addie and my goings on and doings every day on Twitter at TYMKRS. And you guys can come in and chat with us in our IRC. We're in there every day talking about silly plans and building our zombie apocalypse bunker.
Indeed.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys all next week.
Bye.
Bye.